All right, everybody, welcome back to IT Pro TV. I'm your host, Don Pizzat, and in this episode, we're going back into the world of CompTIA IT fundamentals, and we're continuing on with business and productivity software. This is part 2. If you didn't watch part 1, you probably want to check that out. And back in the studios with us for this episode, we've got Mr. Ronnie Wong joining us. Ronnie, thanks for coming back.
Hey, Don, thank you for having me as we continue on taking a look at the idea of software and the usage that we're going to be taking a look at inside of the workforce. And now we're moving away from the productivity, which is just general usage, right? We went over some of the most basic ones, like Word and Excel and PowerPoint. These are things that you'll probably see every day and just about everybody end up using. But there are going to be other types of software that are a little bit more specific, maybe to your company, okay? Or to at least the style of your company or what your company does. You're also going to end up seeing that there's some software that maybe not everybody's going to end up using, but it's going to be very effective that helps at least us to accomplish the tasks that we need. And then, of course, we want to get into a little bit of accounting software as well. That will, is probably more important than anything else, right? To make sure that bills are paid, it's really going to help us out here. So we'll be diving into all those different layers of software that we want to talk about to make sure that you at least understand what they do.
All right, so the software we talked about in part 1, that was really broad software that every employee can find a way to make use of. But in this episode, the software is tailored a little more towards job roles, right? There'll be particular job roles that need particular software to do their work. And if you're not in that job role, you don't care about that software at all. So some of what we see here, you might not have seen before, or you might not ever see again, depending on the type of work that you do. So Ronnie, what job role do we want to start with?
Well, let's start off with the idea of project management. As companies continue to develop and grow, right? You end up seeing that it's no longer just focused on one thing. It'll start, splitting off, and different branches or different departments will have different goals. But there still needs to be the idea of management between those things too. And then, of course, every department needs to do that. So let's talk about this idea of project management.
All right, so in the project management world, whenever you take on a project, it's a series of tasks, a series of things that need to get done. And somebody has to be keeping track of that, keeping track of what's being worked on. And that person's called a project manager. And project managers need what's really specialized calendar software, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it's really a specialized calendar where it's not just their calendar, it's everybody's. And not just every person, but everything, every piece of equipment, every room. They need to know, is it booked? Is somebody going to be there? Am I making the most out of that resource as possible? And then tracking the deadlines. Am I falling behind? And projecting out to say, am I going to get this task done on time, or are we going to be behind schedule? Where are we at? That's what project management software is all about. And one of the most common ones, we're going to stick with that Microsoft theme, is a product called Microsoft Project. I've got it here on my laptop. And what Microsoft Project does is it lets you present really complex information in a user interface that at first glance, it seems pretty complex. But if you're a project manager, you actually learn this stuff pretty quick and it becomes very intuitive. What we're looking at here, the key component of what we're looking at is this right here. It's called a task list. This is all of the work that needs to be done and how long it's going to take. And if we start it on one day, what day we'll finish it. So for example, we've got this review business strategy landscape. That sounds like buzzwords right there. But inside of it, we've got things like complete a SWOT analysis, right? There's a strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat analysis. So they want to do a SWOT analysis. They've estimated it's going to take 5 days, and they're planning on starting it on Tuesday, July the 3rd. If they started on Tuesday, July the 3rd, and it takes 5 days, then it's going to finish on Monday, July the 9th, right? So we've got that information right here. Well, maybe somebody calls and says, Don, it's not actually going to take 5 days. It's going to take 4 days. Okay, well, I can come in here and I can adjust this down and say, all right, I'm going to make that 4 days. And now the system is going to update. And if you saw what happened there, this activity, complete the SWOT analysis, is now going to finish on July 6th instead of July 7th, or actually it was accounting for the weekend, wasn't it? So, yeah. See how when it was 5 days, it was going to finish on Monday, July 9th. But when I lower that down to 4 days, now it's finishing on Friday, July 6th. It's even accounting for the weekends because people aren't going to work on the weekends. But it's also updating all of the following activities to adjust their dates and say, now that this one is 1 day earlier, all of these others can be 1 day earlier as well. And now we get a better measurement of when our activity is going to finish. Reviewing the business strategy landscape was a how many days was it originally? It was a 27-day activity. By shortening that up, now it's a 26-day activity, and my overall project length starts to change. So that's kind of the key piece of project management. But in addition to that, you get things like Gantt charts, where you can see the relationships between one activity and another. One activity can't start until another finishes. You get a timeline, so you can tell what exactly should be going on at a given time. What is supposed to be happening right now in my company? And we can come in and we can look at all the different things that are slated to be occurring at that particular time. But one of the most valuable pieces that project management offers you is what's called resource management. I need people to do these tasks, okay? And sometimes the tasks are assigned to somebody really generic here, like I've got marketing lead. Marketing lead is just some generic thing, right? Well, maybe I don't want it to just be marketing lead. I want this to be assigned to Ronnie Wong, right? So Ronnie is going to be the one who's doing the SWOT analysis. I hope you got your paperwork ready, Ronnie.
Yeah.
So I've got him assigned. Well, great. Now I know who is going to be working on that. And if it looks like it's falling behind schedule, I know who to call and yell at and be like, what the heck, Ronnie, why aren't you done, right? But what's really cool here is as a project gets more and more complex, I may add more and more activities to it. So I might come in and add some other activity in here, I don't know, sweep the floor. Somebody's got to sweep the floor, right? So I'm going to say sweep the floor, right? And I need to put when it's going to occur. This is going to be a 2-day activity. Takes a lot of time to sweep the floor. And I want it to start on the 3rd. And whoops. I want it to start on the 3rd. And when I come in and I schedule that to start on the 3rd, it's going to run from July 3rd to July 4th, right? Which is overlapping with the task above it, okay? Now, I get a little warning about that because of the way I calculated the dates, but I'm not too worried about that. But the point is that it does overlap. Now, can I have 2 tasks going on at the same time? Absolutely. But what if I assign Ronnie to do this one as well, okay? What I've done is what's called overallocation. Ronnie is now scheduled to do 2 things at once. That's not going to work. One of these is not going to get done. And it's very hard to see that when you're just looking at calendars, when you're just looking at generic information. But with project management software, it tracks that and it gives us warnings. See the little red person icons over here? And that's how I know I've got a problem. I've overallocated a resource. That's really, really cool stuff. At first glance, project management software doesn't look much different than what we can do in other software. Like I can create a chart like this in Microsoft Excel. It'll do it, right? I can create a calendar view of the activities. I can do that in Outlook. I don't need anything special. I can use Microsoft Publisher to create a calendar. Even Microsoft Word can create a calendar. But the logic that goes on behind the scenes is what makes software like this very powerful. Now, as an individual, I might use Microsoft Project right here by myself. I'm the PM. I'm tracking this. But in a large company, you might have multiple PMs. Maybe you've got a team of 10 project managers, and they need to be able to share information between each other. Well, what I've got here is what's called locally installed software. And Ronnie hinted at this in part 1, is that there's more than one model for deploying software. And with project software like this, it's not uncommon to use a slightly different model, which is called network-hosted software. Microsoft has a product called Microsoft Project Server. It's a server you run in a central location, and all of your project managers can launch project, and they can connect to the server. And the cool part about that is, as one person updates the project, the other people see it. They're able to check in on that and see the updates in real time and understand where the company is at. That's very powerful, but it requires a lot of infrastructure. Microsoft Project itself isn't very cheap, but then the server piece is even more expensive. But the money it can save you in the long run by properly managing your projects makes it absolutely worth it. And that's really, really cool stuff. So unlike Microsoft Word, where it's usually a single person using it, or Excel, it's a single person using it, when we start to get into project management or really business-focused software in general, you usually end up where it's more than one person accessing it. And so then you're not just locally installed, but you're also locally hosted. You have a server that's somewhere in your location that's giving you a central repository of that data that you can access. So that's kind of a critical piece inside of project management.
Now, Don, since you mentioned the idea here of the network hosted type of software as well, we know that project management software, or you might know, but I know, in the last few years, it's even gone further than just having a server on our own site, even the cloud-based ones that are out there too. So, Don, can you show us an example of that?
Yeah, absolutely. And cloud-based is a great solution because setting up a server is not easy. Maintaining the server is even harder. Like, given enough time, anybody can get a server online and get people connected to it. But then keeping it running month after month, year after year, doing the updates and all that becomes a bit of a nightmare. So going to cloud-hosted. Cloud-hosted is where you say, I'm not going to have the server here. I'm going to have the server out there in the cloud. That is a big difference. And when you go to the cloud world, you've got a couple of choices. And sticking with Microsoft Project, you can use Office 365 and have a project server that's actually hosted by Microsoft, so you don't have to worry about the server. And then you just take your Microsoft project and you connect to that server at Microsoft side. Or you can go even further and use a product like what we use here at IT Pro TV. We use a product called Smartsheet. And with Smartsheet, we can do project management just like I was showing you a moment ago, right? So here's my task list, here's my Gantt chart, just like I showed. But in this scenario, it's entirely in the cloud. I don't even install software on my computer. I just browse to their website. I go to smartsheet.com, I log in, and then here's my project. And I can come in and I can take some tasks, right? So here I've got a couple of tasks laid out. And these are two tasks that, well, I guess those are kind of overlapping. Let's add in, task 41 and task 42. So I'm just going to punch these in, and I'm going to set them both to be on 7/1/18. So those are two overlapping tasks. They occur at the same time. And as far as who they're being assigned to, I can come in and I can assign them to Ronnie Wong, right? And let's see. I don't want to send you a bunch of email notifications. So when you're dealing with cloud software like this, how does he know I'm adding things? Well, it'll send email notifications. So that's what I was telling it not to do. So I'm going to come in here and just add Ronnie again. So now here I am simultaneously adding Ronnie to activities again. And this project management software will track that. And when I pull up Ronnie's calendar, I'll see a red flag on there that lets me know. It actually waits. It does a refresh. Because it's cloud-based, a lot of stuff doesn't happen in real time like it does in Microsoft Project. So this one actually does a scan. I believe it's every half hour to look for double bookings and things and notify me so that I am aware, wow, I've got a person trying to do two things at once. That's not going to work out for me. But I get the same basic functionality that I would have with any type of cloud or any type of project management software where I can come in, start scheduling these tasks and activities, putting people to work, pulling up calendar views. I'm in the Gantt view here, but I could switch to a calendar view and jump in here. And, I kind of messed it up by putting my tasks several months prior to the actual project. But I can come in here and find, there they were, the actual calendar view right here. So very similar to what we do with the software on our own desktop. The difference here being that it is entirely hosted in the cloud. And that does make a big difference as far as the support side. This example here is project management. It doesn't have to be project management. It could be any type of software. A lot of people have gone to cloud-based software for their email, contacts calendar, file storage, any number of things have gone cloud-hosted these days. With project management or job-focused, role-focused software like this, it's usually pretty specialized, so it's hard to find people to support it. And the cloud model is really ideal because now we don't have to worry about supporting it ourselves. We let somebody else do it, and we just pay a subscription.
Yeah, Don, there's no doubt that the idea here that most people don't get is that they might wonder, why don't I have it on my machine if I'm going to need it? Well, you may not. It's just like what Don said at the beginning of the episode. It might be your job role that requires you to have it, but at the same time, knowing that those things exist, sometimes you'll also hear the term like line of business. In other words, just that specific focus of that software. And here's one that you'll probably see as well, which is the idea of some project management software. Now, besides that, there are other types of software that are highly specialized in this way as well. So what we want to do, of course, is introduce you to a couple of different ones that you might also encounter as too. So let's take a look at my machine, and we're at least going to show you some of the ones that's really big. If your business is related to sales, okay, and some particular,
most businesses are.
Most businesses are, right? And it is related to sales, more than likely you'll use something that's a customer relational management based system or manager that will allow you, of course, to track the potential customers as well as your existing customers and everything else that happens too. Salesforce is one of the biggest ones that's out there that you can see. And so here it says, #1 customer relationship management platform on cloud-based for sales, service, marketing. Don't require IT experts to set up or manage. Don, that sounds like a solution for me, that the idea of actually going to the cloud really does seem to help, even in something like setting it up, like what you were mentioning here. And the only difference for us then is that we pay and then we get everything integrated in the way that we want to. But they do a lot of something like this. So if you're sales related, you're probably going to see something that's fairly similar to this in its actions and what it does. The other one that you might do is even more specifically focused. So for example, right here at IT Pro TV, we have multiple studios, Don. And the idea of the project management software that you were showing, Smartsheets, it actually seems like it helps out a lot in what we might do. But what if we need something specific because we needed studio management? Well, that's a more specific business related case. And there's one that we have is what we use is one called Fox OMS. And if you're not running a studio, right, where you have multiple studios that you're keeping track of, as well as who's going to be in those studios, well, then you might not need something like Fox OMS. But on this one, I can go in here, and if I was the studio manager, I could see if I scheduled something and another show was already taking place. And here we are, Don, in Studio 5 right here. But if I looked into the other studios and I realized I had scheduled another one, it would show up here too, or try to. And there's different views that we can see. Once we actually find that studio in Studio 5 for that time period, I can then scroll down and see there's Don, he's booked for this one, as well as Ronnie right there. So we're actually scheduled, and you can see what's actually being in use at this point. You of course can change that focus away a little bit more too, if you like to see the idea of a calendar view. Oh, that's terrible. More of a month type of calendar. That way you can project out into the future, or even by the week. That changes for you, or if you're just focusing in on today and changing up the timeline. So either way, whether I'm looking for it by the host or by the actual studio here, we can see where it really does. It allows me to find what's in use and what's not in use, and resources.
And building on what Ronnie said, if you're managing studio productions like we do, this software is really valuable. We love it. We use it every day. But if you're not working in a recording studio, this software is absolutely useless to you, right? The point here is not that that reflects poorly on the software. It's that there are a ton of software options that are out there that are built around a very specific need. And there's no way that we could possibly cover every aspect of every different business that's out there. So there is generalized software that everyone uses, like the Microsoft Office suite, that you'll want to familiarize yourself with, that you're going to encounter that all throughout your life, or at least clones of it, like LibreOffice and OpenOffice. You will see those throughout your life. Other ones, though, are very specialized. And when you go to a new company, they'll likely have to do what's called onboarding. They'll have to teach you the software that they use. Even software like Salesforce, where maybe I work for one company doing sales, and then I leave and I go work for another company that's also doing sales, you'll find that Salesforce can be heavily customized and altered and changed and made so that it's very specific to a company. So now, yeah, I might be familiar with Salesforce, but I go to a new company and it's like learning all over again, starting from scratch. Business applications are critical. They're really important. They're what helps a business function. But they're typically customized or tweaked to that particular business. So there is going to be a learning curve there. Don't panic. When you go to work for a company and they've got specialized software like this, they know that. They know that they've got to onboard, that they've got to teach and give you a chance to learn. Or if they don't, then they likely have a hard time hiring and retaining employees. So that's a different challenge people have. But that type of software can be very, very, very niche, like a niche product, where just maybe even only a couple of companies run that software, but hopefully it's stable. It's going to be around a while, and you just have to learn it and get in there and figure it out. All right, now we talked about our kind of business-focused software. One type of software we haven't talked about, you mentioned at the beginning of the episode, was accounting software,
right.
And this is one that doesn't deviate much from company to company because there are a lot of laws and regulations around it. Accounting is a very tricky beast. So, Ronnie, can you give us an example of accounting software?
Yeah, the accounting software is kind of, when we talk about a niche focus, right, that's where we're going to see that. Because even though companies will use just about every accounting software that's out there, these products are so incredibly detailed. It's amazing on what they can track and what they don't track. So let's take a look at one. And I've just pulled up the website on my screen here, one called QuickBooks that's available for your company. And depending on the size of your company, you're going to see that sometimes the product will fit exactly right. And then as you scale up, in other words, as your company grows, you might have to take the product that you were used to being able to use as a small business owner and have to scale that up. In other words, go to another product to find that there's even more details that you have to track where that existing software may not work. But QuickBooks has been out there for a long, long time that can track just about everything, especially when we deal with accounting. Now, you might think I'm joking, but let's take a look at just this idea of some of these icons that they're talking about. You can manage bills if you want to. So if you're paying and tracking bills, it gives you that ability, of course, to get those invoices in, and then, of course, to actually be able to pay those as they come out as we need to. Track mileage for companies that also have to have something like this as well, where, if you're turning in those mileage records, they have the ability for you to have that in place. Of course, income versus expenses, that's always a good one. That's what we hope, right? More income, less expenses. It can at least give us that ability to see that. Invoicing and payment, once again, if I'm charging someone and I want to make sure those payments come in, we'll be able to do that as well. So you name it, managing contractors, paying out workers, multiple users that can be used here. Track even time that's actually being used on certain clock employee time and billable hours. That's kind of a big one, as well. Being able to actually know, when you can charge a customer for the hours that's actually being used. So a lot of details that are involved here, and there's probably even more. Yeah, as I click on that little arrow that expands out even more, inventory reporting, tax, estimates, deductions, capital, track projects, you name it. This software has, is very interesting and is gigantic too. When you purchase something like this, you can't expect it to cost them $99 a lot of times, right? You might end up seeing it's going to cost a lot more, and it may even be where the charge is a little bit different, like how big your company is, and it may expand and grow that way too.
Another unique aspect of software like this is that updates really aren't optional. They're really required. That when you're dealing with things like tax code changes from year to year. So even though you might go and buy a retail copy of the software and install it locally, you'll still need to update it. You'll usually purchase a new version each year to make sure that you're getting the latest tax code and other things. That's kind of a critical piece of it, and not entirely unique to accounting, but very, very visible in the world of accounting. And Ronnie was showing QuickBooks. Obviously, there are other products that are out there. Peachtree comes to mind, and even like Quicken for the home user. So it's a different versions of it. And then there's ones that are very, very focused on things like taxes, like TurboTax. But this software, it is responsible for making a business function. You've got to be able to take in money. You've got to be able to pay bills. You've got to be able to cut a payroll check. That's really critical stuff. Now, you might not use something completely on-premises like QuickBooks. You might go cloud-based. There's plenty of products that are out there, like NetSuite is one of the largest ones, where they do enterprise sales for massive organizations and track records and report. And there's plenty of other things from, I'm trying to remember the name of the company that makes the AS400 stuff, which is a big mainframe software for tracking for big enterprises. There's several other players that are in that space. But the key thing here is that if something goes wrong with this software, as an IT technician, this will usually be a high priority problem. Even though it might only affect 1 or 2 employees directly, it affects the entire company the moment like a payroll check doesn't go out. That would be a big deal.
No doubt. Don, this is actually some good things that we have to actually think about and focus. We might not be where we're having to learn every aspect of it, but just realize you're going to encounter some software like this where you'll be maybe supporting it like in the general software, but more than likely in something specialized like this, you may have to call for help as well when you start doing this too. So don't be afraid to use that tech support number if you need to make sure that you get all the help that you need to set everything up.
Yeah, and I think we made fun of like Microsoft tech support in some other episodes, but with Intuit, it's not so bad. Once you get past the first person on the phone, they're pretty helpful. Key thing to remember with all of the software that we've talked about in these episodes is that you absolutely need to be backing up your work.
Oh yeah.
Because no matter what goes wrong with software, as long as you have a good backup of your documents, you'll be all right. And software like QuickBooks, I mean, it is very, very forceful about making you do a backup at least once a day. There's a reason for that. if you lose all your financial data, that's really, really bad. If I lose my personal calendar, I don't really care. But if I lose financial data for the company, I mean, you can go to jail in some cases. Like you're fiscally liable for maintaining some of this stuff. So that's really important, having a good backup strategy in place. End users have to learn how to use the software. IT technicians have to learn how to support the software. And throughout part 1 and part 2, I feel like we've covered a pretty wide range of software and given you guys an idea of some of the things that we'll see that are out there and kind of set the stage for what an IT worker is expected to be familiar with. All right, so Ronnie, before we wrap this one up, did you have anything else that you wanted to talk about in the world of business and productivity software?
Well, just remember that this is probably what you're going to encounter more often when users need help. If you're in that support technician role at some point, most of the time they're not going to be saying, hey, this is something I can't figure out. It's going to be because they need help in getting that software running or making it do what they want it to do. So be familiarize yourself with it, and that will help you out as you continue on in your IT career.
All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to wrap up this episode, and it's the end of our part 1, part 2 here on business and productivity software. But stay tuned because we definitely have more CompTIA IT fundamentals coming up. But for now, signing off for IT Pro TV, I've been your host, Don Pezet.
And I'm Ronnie Wong.
And we will see you next time.
Thank you for watching IT Pro TV.